Coming up in the Bahamas tonight, find out what 2 officers are facing following a custody death inquest.
Also ahead tonight, a political activist before a judge today, and he faces some serious charges.
Plus, hear what Bahamians have to say about the PLP's first 12 months in office. The National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This segment of the news is brought to you by BTC, powered by Lime.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kendino Knowles.
And I'm Charisma Robinson, sitting in for Keishla Adderley. Thanks so much for joining us.
Unlawful killing is the verdict handed down by a 5-member jury this afternoon in the Aaron Roll coroner's inquest.
The jury's decision comes after weeks of testimony in the case. Vern Carey has this.
The 4-women, 1-man jury started deliberating in the Aaron Roll coroner's inquest at about 11:26 Tuesday morning, and in the end, they ruled that the 20-year-old's death was unlawful. Before that happened, however, acting coroner Janine Weech-Gomez told jurors to consider all of the evidence in the case and not to be swayed by sympathy for Aaron Roll, who died while in custody at the Southern Police Station back in February. Court evidence shows that Roll died from a ruptured intestine and internal bleeding caused by blunt force trauma. Meantime, the acting coroner noted in her summation that Roll was outnumbered 2-1 in the interview room at the police station. She also asked jurors to consider whether there was a reason for the baton to be used on Roll in the circumstances, and whether police witnesses in the case were seeking to avoid responsibility for Roll's death. And after some 4 hours of deliberations, jurors returned shortly after 3, seeking clarity on whether or not their verdict had to be unanimous. They retired again, returning about 10 minutes later with a 4-1 unlawful killing verdict. Outside court, Roll's father Godfrey and his aunt Elma had this response.
I can sleep good tonight now. I don't want to worry no more when the police stand and doing it. I get justice over there on that.
I'm very pleased that my lawyer did a good job, and I'm very pleased that justice has been done.
Meantime, their attorney, Christina Galanis, stressed that she and the Roll family have nothing against the police and applaud officers who are honest and hardworking. However, she had this concern.
I frequently advise people of their rights while in police custody. I also advise them that they are to be respectful to all police officers. However, no matter how I advise my clients, the simple fact of the matter is that if we as a society ought to be safe and feel safe in police custody, all police officers must in turn consistently acknowledge and uphold our rights. That is the only way the system will function properly.
Attorney Lennox Colby, who represented Officer 2648 Carl Smith and Officer 2126 Smith, also had this response.
They maintain that there was nothing that they did. When Aaron Roll tried to escape police custody, and the force that they used on him was consistent with their training, was consistent with the law, and they are satisfied that they had not injured him to the extent that he should die.
Now, based on the jury's verdict, the court will make recommendations next Tuesday on whether or not a criminal trial will follow. Fern Carey, ZNS Network News.
A political activist facing a magistrate this afternoon in connection with a serious crime.
He's accused of making death threats against a government official and a police officer. Jimena Swain was in court for the arraignment.
Political activist Omar Archer in the gray suit of Nassau Village had his day in court this afternoon when he pleaded not guilty to intentional libel and 2 counts of threats of death. The first count alleges that Archer published defamatory material about the Honorable Keith Bell on May 2, 2013. He's also accused of threatening him with death on the same day. On May 3rd, it's alleged that he threatened to kill Police Corporal 405 Adrian Miller with death. The charges stem from a post appearing on the social media site Facebook attributed to Archer, where he allegedly threatened to shoot Minister of State for National Security Keith Bell in the face with an AK-47 assault rifle. Archer pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. He was represented by attorney Philip Hilton. Director of Public Prosecutions Finette Graham-Allen strongly objected to Archer being granted bail based on the very serious nature of the offenses. In her argument, she said if law and order was to be maintained and you have people going around making threats of death against law enforcement officers, she didn't know what was going to happen to law enforcement in this country. Archer's attorney Philip Hilton argued that his client is a self-employed landscaper and has been awarded government contracts. He also stated that his client had no previous convictions and is a fit candidate to be granted bail. Despite the objections, Magistrate Bethel granted Archer bail in the sum of $15,000 with 2 sureties. He is also to report to the East Street South Police Station 3 times a week. Magistrate Bethel warned Archer that any publication of threats would mean a revocation of bail. Archer was a former chairman of the Bahamas Democratic Movement and a former member of the Progressive Liberal Party. Jiminita Swain, ZNS Network News.
Well, after almost 10 years of fighting to prevent extradition to the United States, 14 men were committed to answer drug-related charges on Tuesday. Prosecutors allege that the men are all part of a multinational drug smuggling gang. Deputy Chief Magistrate Carly de Bethel handed down a lengthy ruling committing the men to the United States. They are Melvin Maycock Sr. and his son, Trevor Roberts, DeVroy Moss, Shanto Curry, Gordon Newbold, Sheldon Moore, Brian and Lyndon Deal, Teray Lockhart, Lauren Lockhart, Carl Culmer, Derek Rigby, and Wilfred Ferguson. The request for extradition was made back in 2004. Magistrate Bethel informed the men that they had 14 days to make applications for habeas corpus, which means that the Supreme Court is being asked to look at the proceedings again to see whether or not the committal can in fact stand in law. She then committed the men to the care of the Superintendent of Prisons to await extradition to the United States. The magistrate noted that Maycock Sr. will not be extradited to the U.S. until the sentence he is currently serving is complete.
Testimony continued today in the Kofi Goodman murder trial. Goodman is accused of killing 11-year-old Columbus primary student Marco Archer back in September of 2011. During today's proceedings, jurors heard from evidence from another sister of Marco Archer, Tanzia Humes. After wrapping up her testimony, Humes was cross-examined by Goodman's attorney, Jeffrey Farquharson, who suggested that she was lying to cover up for her sister, who testified yesterday. The trial continues before Justice Bernard Turner.
Well, an ultimatum has been issued to suspended NIB Director Algernon Cargill, leaving him with 2 weeks to respond to the recently published NIB audit report.
The report came after allegations surfaced involving former NIB Chairman Greg Moss and Cargill. Andrew Knowles has more.
Suspended NIB Director Algernon Cargill has until the end of the month to respond to the NIB audit report. This after Cargill reportedly refused to meet with the board on several occasions to discuss the findings of that report. Well, that didn't sit well with National Insurance Minister Shane Gibson, who noted that the suspended boss is still a paid employee of the board.
We wrote him and asked him to attend the meeting. He said he was busy. We wrote him back and asked him to attend a meeting on the 21st of May. He said he's not available until the 24th of June. We wrote him back and told him he's an employee of National Insurance, and either he show up on the 21st or we'll make a decision in his absence. And so he has between now and the 21st of May to show up, and no stalling will help. All we want him to do is show up to the meeting so that he can discuss the contents of the report.
Cargill has been on leave since November last year. Minister Gibson lamented Monday over several portions of the report being leaked to the media. However, he revealed Tuesday morning that there were in fact 2 reports produced.
One on Greg Moss and one on Mr. Cargill. They're 2 different reports. So if you see a report and you see anything in reference to Mr. Cargill, you wouldn't see anything in reference to Mr. Moss. They're 2 separate and distinct reports.
Minister Gibson did not want to discuss the details of either reports until they're tabled in the House of Assembly. However, he did say that he wasn't surprised with the report on Moss.
I was always in contact with National Insurance from the time I was appointed minister last year, May. I knew of everything, well, just about everything that was happening in National Insurance. And based on the reports I got from day one, I was always told that Moss did nothing wrong. I was always told that.
Meantime, Gibson says a full report was sent to Cargill and his attorney Alfred Sayers from last week. Sayers told our news team today, however, that he is only in possession of a portion of the audit report. Nevertheless, he says pending advice from his client, he would respond by Thursday. Gibson believes, though, that Cargill has had enough time to respond.
Mr. Cargill responded to every single one of those allegations in the affidavit he filed last year. This is nothing new to him. And so he had ample time to study it, to come up with his answers and to meet with us so that we can put this whole situation behind.
And now all that's left is for Mr. Cargill to respond to the report. And once that happens, the board will then make its decision and send it on to the minister as to the way forward for NIB. As for the cost of the report, Minister Gibson did not want to reveal that figure until he had the exact cost. Andrew Knowles, ZNS Network News.
Well, shifting now to news from Parliament, the controversial gaming issue was addressed in the lower house last evening.
Cyan Thompson tells us what the Prime Minister had to say.
Bahamians living abroad can gamble in the country, but those who live here cannot. That's according to the current gaming laws. Prime Minister Christie said the inconsistencies in the law have to be addressed.
That today's laws in the Bahamas enable somebody, my brother or my sister, who can't vote in the Bahamas because they're not ordinarily resident, they can come in the casinos by the laws of the Bahamas and gamble, and they would be acting consistent with the law. And the only difference between me and them is the fact that they can't vote here.
Prime Minister Christie also added this.
The laws of the Bahamas today prevent people on work permit and permanent residents from gaming. The casinos say they have an international singer come out for one night. Want to go into the casino, because she's on a work permit or he's on a work permit, they can't gamble, so they wanted to think about it.
Prime Minister Christie stated that the opposition may have been in support of a no vote during the gaming referendum, but the plans the FNM left in place apparently suggest otherwise.
Had a national position in favor of legitimizing and legalizing all these things, but for politics. And they argue that there was a precedent. The PLP gave them a precedent for politics, and only for politics. They said no, because they themselves opened the gates for both parties to commit to a referendum.
Debate on the Gaming Act is scheduled to take place before the summer break. For the ZNS Network News, I'm Cyan Thompson.
Well, Bahamians today weighing in on the government's performance so far as today marked 1 year since the Progressive Liberal Party took office back in 2012. Our news team took to the streets to get some feedback.
The government doing good, more like give them a chance. They can't rush things.
My biggest disappointment that Parliament is the power body of the country. And anytime you don't use it to your advantage or you bring up a referendum, don't flam the people.
I think they have done a tremendous job. My only desire and hope is that from here on in, they would actually help the small man.
The people was looking for the promises that were offered to the Bahamian people. All didn't get off the ground.
They need a tap down on the crime rate. Yeah. And then the education system needs some improvement.
They would get, to be fair, a D, not a total F, because the system, we the people, we still doing our work and we still going to work and we keeping our economy as stable as we possibly could. It ain't have nothing to do with the government.
It would be a B. It wouldn't be an A. It would be a B.
What would you like to see them improve on? What are you looking for?
Mainly the crime. That's really devastating. The crime. But I know they're trying. This is the first year. I know they're trying. So, but really, I mean, it takes time.
In our first look at weather satellite pictures showing just a few clouds over the 700 islands, meaning the dry and warm conditions will continue. But outside of our studios, we have a temperature of 78 degrees, relative humidity 62%, winds out of the north-northwest at 6 knots, barometric pressure 1,016.3 millibars, it's 30.01 inches, and it is steady. But stay tuned, temperatures around the Family Islands, travel and boating forecast is still to come.
Still to come in the Bahamas tonight, residents in an inner-city community protesting. We'll tell you why.
And police issuing all-point bulletins for 4 wanted men. You're watching the Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Shell Helix Ultra. Performance you can see.